Hello, everyone. I'm Amber Mack, and I'm really excited to be your host of Real Talk 2020 with Nokia. Real Talk is a one-of-a-kind virtual event that connects you with real ideas, real thinking, and real insights to help you adapt to the reality of 2020. We're streaming live on Nokia.com, LinkedIn Live, and Facebook Live to bring you a vision for our 5G future. Whichever platform you are using to view this stream, please share your comments and questions with us throughout the day. We have three themes that we're going to tackle: the need for scalable, high performance, and resilient networks that are also secure, how to unlock the potential in your business with new growth strategies, and how innovations in technology can capitalize on future trends to build a better world. First up, what people want from communications service providers is changing. In this introduction to Real Talk 2020, Nokia's president and CEO, Pekka Lundmark, gives his view on the post-COVID reality for CSPs and asks what role they should play in the era of 5G.
Thank you, and hello to you all. It's a pleasure to welcome you to Virtual Espoo. Since August, I have held almost 100 calls with CSP customers, and I have spoken at virtual roundtables with hundreds more analysts, investors, reporters, and other interested people, and not to mention employees, of course. In those discussions, I have said two sentences more than any others. The first is, my name is Pekka Lundmark, and the second is, CSPs will remain at Nokia's heart. People have been really keen to hear that, and I can see why. I have spent the past 20 years working in enterprises from consumer goods to energy, and more recently, I mentioned the importance of those businesses to my review of Nokia's strategy and operational model. I get it. Enterprise is sexy. It is tangible. It has the margins and unbelievable growth prospects. In comparison, there is a risk that CSPs might seem a bit overshadowed, but not to me and my team at Nokia. Look at it this way. Not only do our CSP customers still provide the vast majority of our revenue, but they bring about 1 million people online every single day. And even when faced with capex constraints, they still deliver vast economic and social value. If you want proof, look at the COVID pandemic. When lockdowns kicked in, our customers coped with a year's worth of additional bandwidth demand in the space of a couple of weeks, sending out public health messaging, providing free data to students, and channeling direct funding from governments to individuals. Boston Consulting Group did a fascinating thought exercise recently. They asked how the pandemic would have affected the global economy if it had struck 2 decades ago rather than today. Their analysis suggests that in the year 2000, a maximum of 0.2% of the labor force would have been able to work remotely. That compares to the 10% of people who did so during this year's pandemic. Today's connectivity levels have saved up to 300 million jobs. They have safeguarded $8 trillion in global GDP, and they have allowed at least 100 million school children and 200 million university students to carry on learning online. That's 75 times as many as 20 years ago. That is just as exciting as anything happening in the enterprise space. In fact, everyone who works in the telecoms ecosystem should feel really proud and really energized by what CSPs have achieved in recent months. I know I do. And that work has been noticed. Consumers and regulators alike have recognized your efforts. But we have to ask, what next? How do we, as an industry, keep on proving our value when there isn't a global pandemic to overcome? And particularly in the middle of an economic downturn, which many experts expect in the next few years. I'm sure we all remember the financial crisis around 2008. It was brutal. From 2007 to 2009, the average revenue per user for many operators fell by over 15%. Customer churn rates rose by a similar amount. to avoid the same crunch this time, we need to think creatively about what the CSP can and should do, what our customers expect, what they want, and how we can give it to them. In one way, this seems straightforward. In fact, our industry has already taken the first steps into a new era. Look at your massive investments in 5G, FTTP, fixed broadband, and new software and platforms. This groundwork creates significant opportunities for CSPs to expand beyond their traditional solutions, addressing new segments. One promising area is enterprise, where we in Nokia are working closely with CSP partners. We are at an early stage in the process of digitalization, but even so, we have already seen a very healthy demand for cloud delivery, as a service business models, industrial digitalization, and value-driving software, to name but a few developments. There is vast opportunity, but with opportunity comes competition. Disaggregation and greater industry specialization will allow new entrants to join you in the 5G ecosystem. We are seeing that happen in many forms. Some big players have moved into mobile networks, and many smaller players see O-RAN as an opportunity to micro-target part of the market. As if that wasn't enough, you still have to handle the constant battle for customer retention and continuous upselling. The fact that you need to take care of all those priorities at once is clear. New tech must be monetized. New revenue streams must be found. New competitors must be accepted, and existing customers must be kept happy too, all while building trust and developing relationships. If it seems complex, well, it is. But that's what today's event is all about: openness, accepting the challenges, and being open to new solutions, new ideas, new voices, new perspectives. Over the next few hours, you will hear from groundbreakers, super forecasters, and thought leaders, some of the leading specialists in their field. They will talk about what they are seeing and how they predict the sector will evolve, what people expect our CSP customers to do, what they need them to do, and crucially, what they might be willing to pay for. And yes, there will be a few Nokia names too, specifically Tommi Uitto, Josh Aroner, Sandy Motley, and Marcus Weldon. But the most important message I want to communicate is that this is not about sales or about market share or even about Nokia's strategic review. Even our own speakers will be putting all of that stuff to one side. Our priority is fresh, unbiased, creative insight. Insight designed to get people thinking about our businesses and our sector holistically. COVID, the risk of a downturn, and general unpredictability around the world have shown us that we cannot just go on expecting business as usual. The health of this sector relies not only on providing good products and services, but on being ambitious. And under my leadership, I want Nokia to tell a more ambitious story of how our CSP partners can improve performance, unlock business potential, and build a better world. This is the time to do it, and I know you share that same ambition. Today is a great starting point, so it gives me great pleasure to declare Real Talk 2020 open. Thank you, and enjoy the day.
Thank you, Pekka. Now more than ever, we are using networks to do everything from staying in touch with each other to delivering education, providing healthcare, and of course, running our businesses. We continue to rely on them and don't stop to think about just how important they are until they're not there and not working when we need them the most. Let's hear from Tommi Uitto next, who is president of mobile networks at Nokia, as he describes the need to build high-performing and resilient networks for the 5G era.
Hi there, I'm Tommi Uitto, President of Nokia's Mobile Networks. I'm pleased to be here to talk with you about scaling network performance and resilience. As you all know, the transition to 5G brings a totally new world of possibilities to consumers as well as enterprise. more advanced applications on the domains of industrial automation, remote medicine, cloud gaming, wireless robotics, you name it, they will all be used all over the world with 5G. One point that these new services have in common is that they all demand extreme performance from the network, both in terms of throughput and latency, as well as connectivity. In today's session, we will have speakers talking about why this connectivity is so critical, and we will look at network security from the mindset of a hacker. But before we move to their presentations, I would like to set the scene with a couple of points that I consider to be particularly important. Realizing the importance of networks. Networks are back, like some people say. Networks are essential to everybody. It is important to be able to connect with one another and to the internet and help each other, and especially in these crazy times and in this new normal, this is more true than ever before. So we know that networks are part of our society's essential critical infrastructure. Every day we rely on our networks to be resilient even under arduous conditions. In a case of natural disasters, the recovery of the telecommunication infrastructure is one of the first things that we do to help each other and other relief actions to be taken efficiently. While voice and video person-to-person communications have become a way of life for us, personally and professionally, there are of course still limitations or more opportunities if we look at the other way around. So we can still move to more immersive forms of communications using augmented reality, virtual reality, holographic 3D image in the communication with one another. This will provide for a more intuitive experience, whether at home or at work. 5G will get even more ingrained into our personal and professional lives. It will be a fundamental part of several building blocks of our economy. In brief, if networks are critical now, they will be even more critical in the future. The second point is the need for performance and resilience. Businesses need a consistent level of network performance for their operations. It is important to keep in mind that being simply available will not be enough for these networks. The correct levels of performance must be available for critical services at all times. There will be a need for strong performance and resilience to meet the expectations of consumers and enterprise which rely on 5G network. We at Nokia, we have a strong record of delivering the best performance networks. In fact, if you look at the 4G LTE networks, we have the fastest ones in the world, according to independent studies, especially with crowdsourcing data. A similar trend starts to arise in 5G, where we have been constantly breaking throughput records with our commercial software and hardware platforms. Technology is now available as part of 5G and 4G, like end-to-end network slicing from core across transport and radio, will be key to deliver on the promise of new advanced 5G services. In slicing, by using a dedicated set of network resources to each of the application, we can make sure that they perform according to specification, service level agreements, and that companies and individuals can rely on them to support their daily activities and business. Another important aspect to keep in mind when we think about networks taking an even stronger role in our lives is security. Network security. For users and companies to trust the network, it must be absolutely secure. That requires solutions that are designed from the outset for security, which are properly managed with a robust detection and response capability, in addition to the preventive capabilities to address eventual threats. Security is an ongoing activity requiring constant adaptation. If security is your last thought, you'll be the first thought in the mind of a hacker. We must be able to continue to scale our networks, and when I say we, I mean we as a humankind. One thing we can be absolutely sure about is that the demand for capacity in these networks will continue to grow as the new services are developed and launched. The networks will of course need to properly scale to support the growing needs of the society. Our industry will continue to develop these new capabilities, whether it's about new spectrum, spectral efficiency, new innovations in radio access that allow you to connect more people and facilitate the growth in IoT, the Internet of Things, to the backbone of the network using optical or some wireless ways to connect different network elements and massive data centers together. It is important that we work together to balance the need for openness and innovation with the need to maintain consistent levels of performance, resilience, and security.
Thank you, Tommy. The network is important, but as the global threat landscape is rapidly evolving and expanding, the need for security has never been greater. I sat down with Karen Elazari, leading security researcher, analyst, and friendly hacker, for an in-depth discussion on the hacker mindset, how 5G and IoT are changing the threat landscape, and what CSPs can do to protect their network and their customers. Karen, thank you so much for joining me today. I was recently listening to an interview that you did on a podcast for MIT, and the host introduced you as a friendly hacker. Is that an accurate description?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this conversation. Yes, I am absolutely proud to call myself a friendly hacker. I think that hacker is not necessarily a criminal term. It's a capability. It's a mindset. And I grew up as a very young, curious little girl right here in sunny Tel Aviv, Israel. And when I was hacking, I didn't realize I was doing anything criminal. I was just driven by curiosity. I was discovering what the internet had to offer. I was learning about how technology worked. I was taking apart computers. I never for a minute thought that my actions could be malicious or criminal. And actually, it was only in the year 95 when I saw the film Hackers that I realized this activity could be actually seen and called a hacker, especially when Angelina Jolie does it. So she is responsible for my career choices. Ever since that moment, I have been very proud to call myself a hacker.
Before we get into the conversation about some of the threats that exist today, I wanted to ask you about this concept of a friendly hacker and a not so friendly hacker. Who gets to decide what the line is?
Fantastic question, Amber. And it's not easy. You know, in the past, in the security world, it was kind of common or classic to talk about white hat hacking versus black hat hacking. You may have heard these terms. I've recently started to walk away from those terms. So firstly, I think that, you know, using a color to denote malicious or unmalicious motivations is not really, you know, it's way too black and white, right? The reality is a lot more like 50 shades of gray in any case. It's a lot more nuanced. And the reason that I like to talk about friendly hackers versus malicious hackers, who draws the line? It's a really good question. It's about, do you cause harm? Are you using your hacking in order to extract payment or to leverage it into somebody doing something that they didn't want to do? These are very clearly malicious activities. However, at the end of the day, there is a moral compass that's kind of internal, right? For each person or each group to decide whether what they're doing is ethical or unethical. And the term ethical hacker has also been used quite popularly in the security industry, and it's you know, there's good reason to use it. I like to talk about friendly hackers because I think that these nuances and these motivations can shift and they can change. And for example, if you look even during democratic campaigns or democratic elections, there might be a group of hackers which is friendly towards a specific cause or a specific idea. But a few years later, they might not be your allies anymore, right? They might be somebody else's friends. And so it could be a shifting alliance. It's not necessarily strict or, you know, cut in stone like black and white. However, for me, that moral compass has always been about how can we use the power of hacking for good? How can we use it to better people's lives, to uncover security vulnerabilities, to improve technology, to improve our lives? And that's my personal compass.
Let's talk a little bit about the conversation that is going on during this event, which is, of course, the future of 5G networks. When it comes to these networks, what is your opinion right now in terms of security?
Oh, fantastic question. So 5G is actually already here in Israel. We started one of the local providers, one of the local CSPs has already rolled out 5G access, and it's available in other places around the world, in the US, in Europe, in Finland. I'm sure that it's already available. And we could rest assured that for criminals, it's not that brand new. Criminals are always the early adopters for any new technology, any new capability that's becoming popular, that's gaining traction. You can rest assured that the criminals will find different ways to abuse it or to research it and to see what they can come out with, with this new capability that's available to them. So I recently had the privilege of listening to an expert who spent more than a decade at Nokia researching cybersecurity threats in cellular networks. Her name is Dr. Silke Holtmans, and she recently spoke at a webinar, and she talked about the actual attacks that she is seeing in the world of 5G from the criminal perspective. And what's really curious is that one of the most popular ways that criminals have been abusing the 5G world is by crafting location finding attacks. So they've been using the signaling protocols, and it might even be SMS protocols, but the basic signaling protocols within the cellular network to help them identify the location of potential targets. Now, this is not necessarily a capability that's used just by criminals. It's also something that could be used by law enforcement, and some aspects of it are built into the network. But when I think about security of 5G networks, that's one thing I consider is the more granular control for location information and whether that could be potentially abused.
When we think about some of these threats, you often hear that people want to get inside the minds of some of those criminal hackers. What are they thinking? What do you think about that mindset?
So the hacker mindset, the attacker mindset is actually extremely educational. And that's how I spend most of my time, most of my days researching the different types of attacks and the motivations for potential attack groups. And it can actually show us a lot. There's an old saying that your adversary can be your greatest teacher. And it's absolutely true. The attackers out there show us what's possible. And sometimes they use the technology in a way that was never planned or intended. Or they take one unrelated technology and they make it even more popular. One great example of that is ransomware, where criminals have come up with almost a perfect crime, where they take away your data, they steal your access to your data, and then they sell you back that access. And recently they have evolve that with the next stage of ransomware, which now also includes the threat of leaking the data. So let's say they attacked the company, they have encrypted their files, they took away a copy of their files. Now they want you to pay in order to decrypt the data so that you can have it, that you can go back to your normal operations. But they also double the payment, and they say that, if you don't want us to leak all of this out to the public, if you don't want to be known as a company that was hacked, you're going to have to pay double. So it's very clever. Yes, it's absolutely criminal. But if you think about it, they're weaponizing our own data against us. And this is a sort of use case that really brings to mind how important cybersecurity is, and even the classic aspects of cybersecurity, like backups or having secure access to your data and making sure that you are ready for such an occasion. And it's not something that a lot of companies thought about, before the advent of ransomware. Backup was never sexy, but ransomware has brought sexy back to backup, if I can say that.
It's interesting, when we talk about network security, we should definitely have a conversation about the Internet of Things, knowing more and more that there are billions of devices connected to the Internet, not all of them secure. So with the rise of IoT, how do you then view the future of network security?
Wow. So first of all, it's true that planet Earth is already home to more digital devices than human beings. The Munich Security Conference did a report on this together with Gartner, and this year, 2020, is the year where we are forecast to have about 3 times more digital devices, IoT devices in our lives than human beings. And probably, Amber, I know that you're in the studio right now, so definitely are surrounded by digital devices. But even at home, where many of us are these days, we have more digital devices than family members and pets. And that's the trend that we're going to see, right? We're sharing our households, and that also means our corporate networks these days, because we're also working from home, we're sharing our household and our corporate networks with, a bevy of devices. And they're for different purposes, whether it's education, entertainment, fitness, home safety. But these devices are part of our ecosystem. They're a part of our lives. Hackers have known this, and they were the early adopters of hacking into these devices. So 5 years ago and 8 years ago, we heard about hackers hacking into baby monitors or home safety cams, and they're still doing it today. If you want to learn a little bit more about it and why, you have to take the security of the devices you bring into your home or your office seriously, all you have to do is go on a little internet safari. You can do that using a search engine called Shodan. Shodan.io, Shodan like the black belt in karate. It's actually a tool that was created by a brilliant friendly hacker to showcase how every internet-connected device could be potentially scanned remotely. And yes, bad guys can use this tool as well, but you can use it to identify the different types of devices that you have in your home, in your organization, in your corporate network, and that you didn't even realize that your office Xerox machine was talking to the internet, but it is. And we have seen the capability to use these devices for malicious purposes, whether it's to harness them into a botnet, that's a network of infected devices that then overloads key internet servers, like in the Mirai attack, which took place in 2016, took down a lot of major internet websites because they overloaded a primary DNS provider. So we've seen that use case. We've seen the use case of using the computing power to generate cryptocurrency. That's crypto mining. These are very creative use cases that criminals have come up with. Now, I want to double down on this, Amber, because a lot of people say, well, I don't have anything to hide. So what if my vacuum cleaner talks to my lamp and to the camera outside? I don't have any secrets. I don't have anything to hide. It's not just about protecting secrets. It's about protecting the connectivity of all of these devices is part of your ecosystem. It's part of the fabric of our new digital life. And if these devices are hacked or manipulated in some way, it actually impacts all of us. So think about it a little bit in the context of hygiene, right? These days with COVID-19, we talk about hygiene all the time. We wash our hands, we maintain social distancing, and you wouldn't want somebody who is potentially infected to just walk down a full street without their mask on. So having all of your devices at home potentially vulnerable is kind of like that. You're not maintaining cyber hygiene. You're actually helping spread the infection further. So I hope that's a lesson to everybody who's listening to kind of take control a little bit about all of the devices that they have in their home. And it can be a little bit scary.
Absolutely. I read recently that the average household with 2 teenage children will own roughly 50 internet-connected devices by 2022. We know more and more there are more opportunities for issues with all of these connected devices. When we talk about hackers and some of the new methods that they are using right now, can you discuss that in terms of what the audience should expect over the coming years?
Yes. So what we should expect from attackers is innovation and adaptation. And we've seen that. We've seen that with the way ransomware now evolved to include that leak element, that extortion element. We've seen that with crypto mining, using computing power to generate cryptocurrencies. We're seeing that with attacks on IoT devices, harnessing them for botnets to take down websites. And a lot of these components in the criminal world are now commoditized. So they're actually done as a service. So you don't have to really be that big of a hacking expert to be a successful cyber criminal. All you need is some seed money, preferably in an alternative cryptocurrency. And you can actually buy or be an affiliate in a larger program that offers ransomware as a service, denial of service as a service, crypto mining as a service. Now, some of the latest aspects that I've been researching, because we've all gone into lockdown, because people work from home, criminals are now focusing on the digital collaboration tools that we all have come to rely on, whether it's Zoom or WebEx or Google Drive or Trello, whatever it is that you use in your company. And by the way, chances are that you use a dozen different digital collaboration devices, not just one. These digital collaboration tools have become the targets for criminals because that's where they can find intellectual property. And more importantly, that's where they can get access. They can trick you by sending you a link that looks just like a WebEx sign-in or a Zoom sign-in, or they can tell you need to update your app because the work, like the Trello or the task management tool, whatever it is that you're using, Slack, whatever it is, you need to update it. And that's how they trick people, and they get on people's devices, on their phones, on their computers. So they're really using whatever's popular right now to get on people's devices. And from there, into the corporate network. So it's a lot about access. This is one of the things I've been really seeing. Criminals are now really focusing on where they can get access to the most lucrative victims, the most lucrative targets. If in the past it was more opportunistic, we're going to send a million phishing emails, we're going to send, we're going to create these fake websites. Now it's a little bit more targeted, and it's about finding specific access to interesting targets that they can monetize. And the monetization is not just about stealing intellectual property. It's also about weaponizing data with ransomware and with leaks. It might be about disruption. It might be about, denial of service. There's different aspects to that. But at the end of the day, you can expect criminals to come up with things that we haven't imagined yet, which is why the hacker mindset is so crucial. It's why we need hackers researching these capabilities and showing us what is possible, because what they show us what's possible now, in 5 years, becomes an attack that we all have to deal with.
So let's talk then a little bit about prevention. What can leaders who are watching today do to protect their networks?
So there's quite a few different things that can be done to protect your network, whether it's your home network or your organizational network. I always say it doesn't start with technology, it starts with talent, it starts with people. Putting the people on the front line and empowering them with capabilities to make better security decisions. We all make security decisions all the time. When we click on a link, when we install an app, when we connect to something, and we need to empower the workforce, whether they're at home or on an island or in the office or in an airplane, to make better decisions. And you yourself, the audience, the dear listener, and of course you, Amber, as well, we've all also had to become the CTOs, the chief technology officers of our own home environment, regardless of what our position in the office is. We might be the CEO or the CFO, we might be a product manager, a journalist, a designer. At home, we're the CTO right now. And so we have to really accept that responsibility with both hands. And that means setting time aside, once a week, once a month, to do a little bit of a review. What's going on with all of our devices? How many digital devices do we actually have at home? Where are they all connecting? Have we updated the software on these devices? When's the last time, Amber, you updated your router operating system?
Well, it's probably been many, many months.
So it's a task that we don't really understand as something that we all have to do. Or alternatively, the communication service providers can step in and actually help people take care of many of these tasks. And this is something I've been saying for years. I'm not just saying it, because we're here on the line with Nokia. I've been saying this for years. Communication service providers have the capability to support people in many ways and to help them, whether it's by protecting the access to the devices that people have at homes, whether it's by making sure that the devices have up-to-date operating systems, or just, empowering people with better security tools so that they can make better decisions themselves. And there's a lot that can be done there. And I think in the past, CSPs have been hesitant to be very active on the security front because it has a little bit of that connotation of we're messing with what's in the pipes. We just want to be the pipe. We don't want to mess with, the flow of data. But when it comes to security, there's actually a lot of things I think CSPs can do to, for example, block known IP addresses that are affiliated with cybercriminal activities, to identify communications that are part of botnet infections and drive down infections. I know there was a project focusing on that in Australia, combining the Australian ISPs, and they have seen great success with reducing their botnet infection rates using a capability like that. So there's a lot more that can be done by the CSPs.
So I started off this conversation with you asking about friendly hackers. So as we wrap up, what are the opportunities to collaborate with the friendly hackers out there?
So one of the most important things I want to share with the audience today is that security is never one and done. It's a journey, and it's a journey that we're all in, and we're all in it together. And that ecosystem requires the attention of technology vendors, communication service providers, individuals making decisions at home, as consumers and as employees in the office, and the global community of friendly hackers, which have actively been helping people identify vulnerabilities. So one of the phenomena, one of the ways to work with hackers is through something called bug bounty programs. And that's something I've been personally researching for the past 5 years at Tel Aviv University. bug bounty programs have proven to show incredible value in helping a major company or an innovative company or even a government agency like the Department of Defense, the American Pentagon, identify vulnerabilities that were in their blind spots for years, months, or for a long period of time. And these vulnerabilities are identified by friendly hackers who then report on them and are acknowledged and rewarded for their actions. That's the bug bounty. That's the bounty element. And it's very important. And the award can be, a T-shirt or money or a gift card or even a medal. The bug bounty program for Tesla gives out medals, challenge coins, which only go out to the top hackers that can hack Tesla's products. That's their cars, their hardware, their firmware. So hackers are really motivated to go after these things. And they call it the Hacker Olympics because you win a medal at the end. And it's one great way. It's just one example of how a company can actively work with hackers. At the end of the day, bug bounty programs are very, very efficient. They're one way to do it. The rest of the work, the rest of the journey, it's, we all have to be in it to win it, right? We all have to consider security as a shared goal, an ecosystem goal, not just something that the IT department needs to worry about, because it is not just about protecting secrets. It's about protecting a digital way of life, one which right now we absolutely rely on and we're going to rely on. So we have to care about security.
Karen, before I let you go, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, so one more thing I wanted to bring up about 5G security. I think 5G is going to be a major part of many other technology mega trends. It's one trend, but when you bring it together with IoT devices, with sensors everywhere, with automotive, autonomous automotives, autonomous vehicles, and with a lot of other trends that are actually converging right now, the security of the 5G configuration and the devices, the technology that's in it is going to be key. It's going to be really crucial. So as you make your decisions right now, as you're planning maybe your 5G journey, as you're thinking right now what you're going to do down the line, think about that as well. It's not just the 5G cellular network that you are buying into or that you're planning into in terms of the technology. It's also a lot of other elements that are going to play into our lives. It could be medical devices, sensors, cars, smart cities, a lot of different elements. And this convergence, this mega trend really requires us to make very responsible decisions these days about, the technologies that we trust and how we plan for a trusted future down the line as well.
Well, listen, thank you so much. I definitely enjoyed getting inside the mind of a friendly hacker like yourself. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Amber. And you're welcome to jump into the friendly hacker world anytime you like. You're invited.
Great. Thank you so much. As we rocket into the 2020s, people are more productive, connected, and visible. Yet, like so much of the future, these advancements are unevenly distributed. Our next speaker, Chris Dancy, gives us a glimpse of how the world's most connected person views our future, exploring human as a service, and why he's convinced we are headed toward a world full of wisdom and not division.
Good morning. My name's Chris Dancy. If you go to Google right now, almost anywhere in the world, and you put in 2 words, most connected, my picture will come right up. Videos about me, news articles, book. I have a show on Netflix. I'm known as the world's most connected person. And that might be a little overwhelming. See, it's not about the number of people I've linked into or the number of people I know. I'm no super networker. It's literally a story of how I use technology and connections and the networks that they live on and learned about who I was and what I valued. I sometimes call this human as a service because my technology didn't define me. It revealed me and allowed me to make some better choices. To unpack this concept of human as a service, I'd like you to think about your life today. It might be how you connect to yourself. You might be someone who uses your technology and networks for work. Most of us are virtually networking or using some sort of networked technology to assist us in our jobs. That same connection to yourself might be how you measure or monitor your sleep, your health, whether it be the calories you intake or the money you spend. All the ways technology help you understand and evaluate how you're doing in the world. The second way today that these connections reveal this concept of human as a service is this idea of how we connect to love. You know, for the better half of this past decade, we've been using our devices, the networks, and the data plans to meet people, to date, to find friends, to book trips, and even start to support the causes and values that we believe in. So many families now connect and monitor and manage each other through their devices, whether it's the safety and well-being of their loved ones that they can't be near, or the safety and well-being of their home through the systems they put in their homes to make sure that their family's taken care of. Furthermore, today, technology allows us to focus on our communities, whether it be supporting our neighbors or causes directly related to the things we care about in and around us. And finally, today, human as a service is about how we connect to the world, whether it be as something as ephemeral and fast moving as the news cycles, or supporting the causes and or marginalized communities that surround us every day. You see, I think in the next 10 years, we're going to have more chance to express our humanity than ever before. The internet and the networks that make the internet work were built for the time we're entering. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I still haven't told you about me. You know, to understand my story, you'd have to go back in time, back to 2008, which might as well be 50 years ago. You see, in 2008, I was about to turn 40 years old. I was 320 pounds. I was a pretty big guy. I drank anywhere between 20 and 30 Diet Cokes a day. I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day, Marlboro Light 100s, and I was constantly angry at the world. It really started back in the 70s when my parents got me my first computer and I put in all of my cassettes and record purchases into a spreadsheet. And I remember printing off this spreadsheet and my dad looking at it thinking I was Albert Einstein. He didn't even understand what a spreadsheet was. But from that point in 1978 to 2008, my entire career was about technology, whether it be local networks, wide area networks, personal area networks, all the things that we've called the way we connect to each other and ourselves. I was there, like so many of us. But like so many of us, it hadn't done much for me personally. So I had to start thinking about my networks and my connections differently. And this meant fundamentally looking at who I was by extracting what I did from those places. For me, understanding where I went, what I did while I was there, who I was with, and making it visual was the key to unlocking that. Now, today in 2020, unlike 2008, you can pick up your phone, you can launch Screen Time or Digital Wellbeing and see how you've spent the last 7 hours. Heck, you can just look at your inbox and see all the people who need you or your text messages. But in 2008, might as well be a world away. It wasn't that simple. So I chose to make every single interaction I made on the internet visible. And how I did that was using Google Calendar. Yep, the same calendar we all use every day to make appointments for doctors and soccer practice. But for me, it was about logging everything I did. I certainly did sit down and make appointments for everything I did all day long. I used a little bit of technological help, basically this small little program that would watch what I did when I was on a browser and copy it over to my calendar. But this allowed me to start seeing in real time how I was spending my time. So often technology allows us to take our time and make it invisible. Hours go, days go, weeks go, and we're like, how did all the time change? But what we've done is we've sharpened our focus and we've pulled back on our perspective. What I wanted to do was zoom in on how I was doing this and what was important. One of the first things I did was took all of those connections and mapped them to the areas in my life that were important. I created one bucket for social network, another bucket for opinions, another bucket for money, another bucket for health, another bucket for environment, another bucket for travel. And anytime I did anything in any of these buckets, it would would pick it up from the internet, put a color on it, and put it on my calendar. This allowed me to see my day where there's thousands of little teeny appointments color coded. And suddenly I knew whether days were good or bad as far as what was important to me. Spending all day binge watching Netflix, posting terrible comments on Yelp, and blocking friends, those days were less than pretty if you look at my calendar. It was a blood splatter of oranges and reds. But slowly, as I learned the types of behaviors I wanted to see visualized, those things changed. It wasn't about counting my steps. It was about taking them. And this was a big shift for me because we all wonder sometimes, what can we do to make our lives fundamentally better? And I believe the answer is in our technology. Unlike a lot of pundits today who would tell you to unplug or disconnect or run from the network, I'm telling you to step in and connect more. And this might sound like unwise advice, but give me a chance. You see, because slowly, between 2008 and 2012, by just looking at who I was chatting with on social networks, what I was listening to through streaming services like music and television, the places I was leaving my opinion, the content I was creating and putting all over the internet, how I was spending my time at work, the emails I spent, documents, or even the money that I was spending, those things visible allowed me to start to take control of my health, make better choices in the friends I have and the places I went. But more than that, they allowed me to start to think about things beyond me, like the environments I was in. You know, something as simple as connecting to a Wi-Fi network at a public restaurant seems pretty uninspired, but oftentimes those restaurants are loud or bright or overwhelming, and that diminishes our ability to focus and to really be with ourselves. So as I moved up through my technology and kept looking at more and more ways that I was expressing myself, from environments to the places I went, to how I meditated, prayed, spoke to myself, and eventually dated. See, today, dating, getting married, having families, all involves technology. When you meet someone, you also meet their entire network. How many of us have wondered, is it too soon to say that I'm in a relationship on Facebook? How many of you wondered, at what point do you friend your mother-in-law? At what point do you have to follow your new boss on Twitter? And is it too soon to link into someone that you might want to work with in the future? You see, our technology today, as I learned over the last 12 years, expressed what I valued, and who got my attention. You know, Abraham Maslow has his famous Maslow hierarchy of needs, and he has this pyramid, everything from physiological needs to safety and security to love and belonging, all the way up through emotional well-being to hope and healing and inspiration. For me, it was really about looking at my apps through that pyramid. Was I spending all my time in apps that really exemplified my best life, or apps that really exemplified my safety and security, my well-being, how I loved and cared for myself, and reorganizing them in a way that allowed me to see them as an expression of who I was and what I valued. Between 2008 and 2018, my life radically changed. The people I knew, how I talked to myself, but more importantly, what I was capable of doing and how I was capable of loving. Because I went from someone who'd been single my entire life to meeting someone in 2016 on an app and getting married in 2018 and creating a home. Today, our home is full of technology. That technology talks to us, each other, ourselves, and the world around us. And I'm sure many of you are starting to see this too, because the networks of today are about harnessing technology, fundamentally make us more human. And I think if we look forward to the future, we'll see that it's just going to keep exemplifying these deep connections of what we believe in and how we care for each other. Today, whether you're a young adult or someone who's getting ready to retire, tracking your health is as simple as picking up your phone or putting on a watch. Watching how you spend your time and behavior is as simple as getting an email with a report of what you did last week, to having your phone remind you not to text and drive, or having preset spending limits on your credit cards that alert you in real time when you go over budget. Today, monitoring your home, making sure your kids are safe, or your connections and friends are well during a pandemic, all are simple. But we forget that these easily expressible ways to see our values are just there. We see our problems because our values have become second nature. And I want us to go back to this idea of our values, because up until this point, the last 50 years has really been about valuing our tools. But I believe the next 50 years of our technology will be about tooling our values. Harnessing these systems are fundamentally making us better humans to each other in the world. By the time I met my spouse and got married in 2018, it was hard. I was going from a world of just me and all of my data and tracking and ways that I cared for myself to having to integrate that. And if you've ever gotten married in the last 10 years, met or dated or had children, you know that technology is a big part of that. So I had to relook at the system that I had built and had to think about how the connections that I would make with my spouse over networks would exemplify our values. And that meant starting by defining our values of health, home, family, work, and service. These values had to be expressed early and then linked to every part of our network. So we didn't pay the mortgage, we paid for home. We didn't buy groceries, we bought health. And see, the network is allowing us, and our technology is allowing us to express this. Where 4G allowed you to walk in and buy a cup of coffee from your mobile phone, 5G will allow you to think about and explore where that coffee came from, what type of life the farmer leads. You will be able to make better decisions. But there's a bigger thing we need to start to talk about. And that's this idea that we are all fundamentally changing. And we're changing because of our relationship with technology. One of my favorite mathematicians, yes, I'm one of those people that has mathematician heroes. His name is Richard Tapia. And he has this saying that we don't know how to measure what we care about, so we care about what we measure. And that's the precipice that we're on today, because the technology is not going to go away. It's just going to get more invisible. We don't live in smart homes, we live in homes. And those homes are expressions of how we take care of each other. And it's giving rise to this idea of everyday cyborgs. And it's never been more apparent than if you look at our children and young folks. You know, they express their values through the causes they hashtag, update their profile photos to, or the charities they create on their birthdays. Every single way our young people see the network and the technology they use is an expression of the things they believe in. These aren't social media posts. They are values on who we want to be as people, for ourselves and each other. But we have to dig deep below this concept of cyborg. You know, when people hear the term cyborg, they might think, oh, someone who's like a machine or a robot or any one of these other cliche examples we get from the movie. But really, a cyborg is just an organism, a living being who's been enhanced or becomes part of a piece of technology. Glasses make you a cyborg. Shoes, in some ways, make you a cyborg. But today, kids, technology is part of them. No longer is it normal for kids to have a phone. Most kids have a phone and some type of wearable technology. And how many of us see young people today walking around with an earbud permanently in their ear? We went from carrying technology to wearing it to putting it inside us. And this doesn't make our kids less kids. It doesn't make them less human. And it certainly doesn't help define who we are. Who we are is what we do. If your kid's putting in earbuds to listen to a podcast, play a game where they connect with their friends, or spend time learning about other cultures, that makes them better people. It doesn't make them better machines. We need to stop making this online, offline judgment about everyone in our lives and what's important. You're no more human because you can avoid using your phone than someone who spends all their time on it. You know, I've seen great videos of young people today who can't get their parents' attention, so they literally go outside and ring the doorbell because they know their dad will pick up at work if someone is at the front door. You see, it's allowing us to connect and show love so much more deeply. In the future, as technology becomes more invisible and more pervasive, and we start wearing it on our clothes, and it's automatically in the homes we use, we'll think about this a lot differently. But right now, it's important that we come to terms with the idea that we are changing, and how we're showing our values is totally on display for the world to see. See, we can't escape technology because we become it. And there's no shame in that. We're no less human now than when we first put on shoes or tried to work with fire. Over the next 10 years, the pyramid and paradigm shift from tools for just some of us to tools for all of us is going to flip. Suddenly, we're going to look at solutions and networks for entire populations of people instead of just one person. Where Uber seemed like a good idea in 2010, in 2020, we can deploy a solution to mitigate and track a pandemic in real time. That's a paradigm shift in 10 years. And that's what our networks and our values are starting to uncover. But it's more than that. How we say thank you, from children today who have charities instead of birthdays on social media, to places we shop that allow a part of every dollar to go to the donations that we want to support in the causes, to applications where we launch and order food that allow us to say thank you to the people making those things, even digital payments that allow a portion of every payment to go to causes you care about. How we say thank you is evolving and changing. And in the next 10 years, it's going to become more obvious how much we support and care for each other. But marginalized groups are also a big part of this. Today, how we connect and what we connect to allow us to see the groups behind those connections. One of my favorite features in an application called TripIt, which is an application that helps me focus on organizing my travel, is it shows me the safety of the area that I'm going to be visiting. It shows me the safety for LGBT community, and it shows me the safety for Black and Brown people. And I know right away if that's the type of community I want to be involved in. But it goes even further because the mental health crisis is being addressed. Today, on many networks, if someone is having trouble, there's an option to get them help. There's an option for you to start to understand what you need and how you connect to the world. In many countries, these mental health systems are built right into the everyday social networks that we use. The networks of the next 10 years will have to address and start to heal the disasters happening in our world. Everything from climate change to pandemics. Today, if you take a car, you can make sure it's carbon neutral. If you're using Snapchat, it can put a filter on and show you the effects of climate change where you live. Social networks like Facebook allow you to check in and say you're safe when there's a fire or flood or earthquake. And home sharing sites like Airbnb have a place where you can volunteer your home to let strangers come and stay if they've been displaced by emergencies. This is what the internet was built for. And this is the reason I believe so strongly in the next 10 years. You know, when the pandemic hit, I was at Walt Disney World and I was scared. I had just gotten home from Europe. I wasn't sure if I'd make it. And on the drive home, because I didn't feel safe flying, I created a little teeny system for my neighborhood. You see, my neighborhood where I live now is full of older folks, and they have varying health conditions. The closest hospital is about an hour away. I didn't know in March what the pandemic would do to my neighborhood, but I knew my neighborhood would need food. They would need help fixing things. They would possibly even need medical help. And we're a neighborhood full of nurses, doctors, teachers, handymen. So I built a little system that allowed my neighbors to log in, ask for help, or log in and volunteer. That system got replicated and sent around the world and now is in multiple countries, helping so many people, hundreds of thousands. This is just one example of how at the beginning of this decade here in 2020, this network and all of our networks are changing. Because no longer is it about the internet. The internet is invisible. It's not about the social networks we use. We just take them for granted. The support networks like GoFundMe and Kickstarter, they're there to show our friends and our family and the people we believe in how to support them. Or even the creator networks that we're starting to see, everything from Buy Me a Coffee to Patreon. You see, we're in the age of what they call mutual aid networks. And that means the network that empowered us to buy things remotely now empowers us to heal communities in real time locally. And that's an exciting thing because the network and technology was built for this. So what can you do? Well, first, share this talk. Share it with your friends. Think about it. Watch it a second time. You could even watch it on double speed, probably. Think about how every time you pick up your phone, send an email, or order something online, you're expressing your values. We no longer live in a world where we download apps that become habits. We now live in a world where we access networks that become solutions for each and every single one of us. I believe we are just at the beginning of the most amazing time in our life because I believe the best apps are people. Have a great rest of your conference, and thank you so much for spending this time with me.
That concludes our first session. I just wanted to check in with some of the conversations and themes that are coming in throughout this live broadcast. First up, there are people watching from all over the world. A shout out to people in India, South Africa, and Malaysia. Also, lots of love for Nokia. One viewer was talking about Karen saying, all the fantastic advantages of 5G are definitely linked to security, and it's so important. And in terms of what we just saw from Chris Dancy, another viewer said that he makes a really interesting connection between how we use our networks to do good in the world and help define who we are as individuals. Now, please join us again at 1 p.m. GMT for our second session, where we'll be exploring how to unlock business potential. I look forward to seeing you then.